Last Friday, on my non-show day, we had a great event in our home. We had Bret Baier come and speak. He is, as you all know, likely the Fox News host and a prolific writer. He did a book talk at our house and then sold his books. But this is the book I want to share with you that I interviewed him about. It is called 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. So first, I'll just show you a quick map, the very wonderful, back from vacation. If you can show our listeners, we have some quick pictures from the event at our home. There's Bret Baier in our area where we do interviews in our home. And, it was fun to interview him. He's a really just friendly, nice, thoughtful guy. And that's my husband and myself with Bret Baier. Okay, I want to tell you, though, the lessons for America Can We Talk that came from this book review. The book is basically about the Tehran Conference, which was a conference in 1943 held between FDR, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin. The three of them got together in Tehran to discuss what they were going to do, what the world was going to do to stop Hitler, to stop the Nazi expansion, as in 1943 was wildly ongoing. There had been pressure from Stalin to push the Allied forces, the Brits and America and others, to do a front, pushing in, as ultimately was done on D-Day, pushing in toward France. The Allies had been worried prior to that time. They didn't have sufficient troops. Obviously, America's hung up working in the Pacific, trying to fight the Japanese. But the conference, obviously fraught with all sorts of the unknowns, the concerns, and honestly, a lot of mistrust between Churchill and FDR as opposed to Stalin. Stalin, at that point in 1943, had already literally killed millions and millions of his own people. Churchill and FDR knew this about Stalin, but they needed him. So it's a great book, a great read. But the lessons I want to share with you for America Can We Talk from that event and from the book really are several. One is, it is a tremendous asset to understand history. For the American people to understand history, understand what all the consequences were, the various choices they made, the decision finally to go ahead with D-Day, which was, of course, one of the most heroic and overwhelmingly it was a desperate and very, very dangerous day for the American troops and the other allies, and just tremendous loss of life. That real patriotism that just said, we're going to go in and we're going to do this, and we recognize many of us won't make it out. Those young men, going to beaches of Normandy, had no idea if they'd make it out. But that patriotism, that fervor, that recognition, sometimes there is something worth fighting for that may even take your own life. Sometimes you have to stand up for liberty. The other lesson is, just because we haven't been taught these things in public schools, sadly, in the recent decades, we'll be talking about later in the show, we've had kind of an onslaught in the American culture, in our public schools, in academia, that demeans American history, that fails to glorify and fails to even tell the accurate story of the greatness of America, what the American people and the American military have done over decades in defending freedom in this world. We don't teach that enough in public schools. And because we do not have sufficient education in the public schools over what Americans have done in history, we have Americans today too easily duped into thinking America is an imperial power, is a bad country, has a bad history. The ability of the American left to sell socialism in this country is due directly to our failure to educate our students about the virtues, the greatness of freedom, what freedom has wrought in this country, what free markets have wrought, what bravery and standing up for liberty has brought to this country. Another point that got discussed at great length, and I'll just we assume in our country, okay, so we have millennials who are ignorant and don't know a thing about American history, do not have a sense of America's greatness. We have members of Congress who don't know America's history, don't understand America's greatness, don't understand the Constitution, don't recognize if you do not follow and uphold the Constitution, this whole extraordinary experiment in human liberty will fail. We have members of Congress just as ignorant as young millennials. In fact, senior members of the Senate, such as Bernie Sanders, no clue about the virtue and greatness of America's history, no clue about the importance of standing up for liberty, and that sometimes liberty is worth fighting for, and that there is a difference between the freedom and the abundance and greatness and goodness of America and the repression and the evil and the horror of socialism and communism, because people don't know that. They get sucked into really, really bad ideas. Closing out this first 5 on Bret Baier, I want to encourage you, not just this book, but Bret Baier actually also wrote, this is his 3rd book. He wrote 3 Days in January, Dwight Eisenhower's Final Mission. He wrote 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. And now this book that I got to interview him about, 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. And this Christmas time, this most recent book is also available in a young readers format. And I guess I haven't seen them, but Bret Baier was telling the people at our home on Friday, available as a set or individually, books that retell these stories at the grade level at basically 8 to 13 years old, so young readers can begin to grasp the importance of America's history. It was a really exciting and kind of a America-affirming conversation to recognize that there's a tremendous amount of American history not known that is just wrapped up in all the kind of old glory days we ignore and don't remember well enough and don't honor well enough, that we end up in a country where we could actually think that maybe socialism and communism are great answers. They are not. They are the source of human misery.